I am Todd Reed. I'm Senior Communications Advisor for the Virginia Department of Education. I have been working in and around communications in government, in public and private sector for nearly 30 years now. And wanted to talk to you all today. I'm glad to have the opportunity to talk to you today about strategic communications and kind of what is the difference. I want to start with kind of what is the difference between just communications. I'm sure each of you've got a comms plan. Each of you may have a comms person or a team of comms people there in your division. But what is the difference when we talk about strategic communications versus just the regular day-to-day communications? First of all, your strategic communications, your regular comms plan should be a part of it. And when we talk about strategic, it sits kind of right in the middle of the three parts of any plan that you should be thinking about. The first one is, what is your objective? What is the broad goal that you're trying to achieve? The second is the strategy, and how does the strategy support that objective? Strategy is your plan of action for achieving the goal. And then last is tactics. Tactics support the strategy. Tactics are the steps you're going to take and the tools you're going to use to get there. Too often, you will spend 99% of your time talking about tactics. Here's how we're going to do this. What color does this need to be? Are we going to do this on Facebook? We're going to do it on here. We're going to do it there. What are we going to do? What button should this go under on the website? All that kind of stuff. Those are tactics. They're important. They help you execute what you're doing. But if you lose track of your objective for any length of time, you're going to be surprised just how quickly everybody under you begins to focus on these irrelevant and kind of inane things that will just detract from what you're trying to do. You're now in your second year as a superintendent. You've been kind of through the first year. Hopefully now you've set some goals, be they professional, be they for the division, that are very specific. We always encourage and look to folks to have somewhere between 1 to 3 goals. If you have more than 3, it's a lot. It's a lot to try to focus on. It's a lot to try to communicate and get people on board with. But you should have 3 goals and then be able to work through your objective, strategy, and tactics to get to there. I think the best example that I like to use here is the D-Day invasion. We've had the opportunity to go to Normandy, to Omaha Beach, and to see the cemetery there. This is a map that is on the wall of one of the memorials. And it is a map that when you're standing there, you begin to understand that you are standing on a place where not only thousands and thousands of dedicated soldiers lost their lives, but it's also the place where the world was saved, right there where you landed. And it shows here, that they came in. Well, we'll talk about this when we get to tactics in a second. But what was the objective of D-Day? The objective of D-Day was to save the world and to defeat Nazi tyranny. It's a big objective. How did you do it? You needed to open up an Eastern Front on Hitler in Europe. So now you have to think, well, how do I do that? I've got my objective. I've got my strategy. How do they do that? Well, you pretend to go to Calais, and then you have a amphibious landing in Normandy backed up by paratroopers. Those are your tactics. It's all right here on the wall. And when you come in on the beaches of Normandy, all the way to Berlin, all the way to Rome, that is where they went. This particular place is where they saved the world from. And they did it using those kind of tactics and strategy. It's important, I think, it's a pretty clear way to delineate what is a tactic, what is the strategy, what is the objective, because often the strategy and tactics will get intermingled. People will think they're talking about strategy, but they're really talking about tactics. We're considering tactics, and again, you will find yourself, if you let folks spending 99% of that time on tactics. So again, objective. What are you trying to achieve? Strategy, what's your plan to achieve it? Tactics, what are your steps to get there? So think about your role there as a superintendent, there in the division, and what are the objectives you're trying to achieve? What are the specific objectives you're trying to achieve? What are your strategies for how you're going to achieve it? And then what are the tactics and the ways, the tools that you're going to use to get there? Part of that should be how you communicate, and we'll talk about it in a second, but it's how you communicate to different audiences, both internally and externally, to different stakeholder groups, and then just kind of general at large. But what is strategic communications? Strategic communications is purposeful use of communications, part of your plan, one of your tactics by the entity to fulfill the objective. It is not a strategy unto itself. It shouldn't sit on its own little island. It should be integrated into each one of your objectives and your plans to achieve those. It's not easy to keep that focus. It's not easy to keep moving forward with this, but you ought to make it and set it up to be as simple as possible. You don't need to make this incredibly complicated. Whoops, I screwed up. Sorry. But keep it easy and keep it or make it easy as you can and keep it as simple as possible. This is our audience participation part of the presentation. Does anybody want to take a guess at what these lines are? And feel free to shout it out.
Yeah, y'all don't be shy. Come off mute.
Those numbers are the total estimated circulation of daily newspapers as of 2020. If your communications plan relies on you talking to your local newspaper and getting covered, it's probably not going to be an effective plan. You may not have a local newspaper. You may have a local newspaper that's actually written, 12 counties away by someone, or if you are in some communities throughout the Commonwealth, you have a newspaper that is the same paper in probably 8 different communities and have the same articles, for all of them. If you have the great misfortune, as I do, of having to read most of the newspapers in the Commonwealth each day, you would see that they largely are the same papers. They take AP or national stories, and they all take the same ones, kind of put them in the same places on their front pages. And then they may have one person in Richmond who writes about topics, but they write for 8 to 12 papers. It used to be you had 8 to 12 different reporters here that you could work with on stories. I was talking to a reporter this morning, and by my best count, I've got probably 3.5 reporters in the state who I would say at print outlets who regularly cover Virginia Department of Education for the entire Commonwealth of Virginia. You all know the situations in your communities, and they're specific to, which outlets they are, and certainly your print ones are struggling. I put the picture up here of, on the left, pretty identifiable, of course, is Mark Zuckerberg, who, as part of, through Facebook and integrating, basically started to kill the model. But the guy on the right is actually the guy who killed the model the most. That is Craig of Craigslist. Your local papers used to make most of their money not off of subscriptions, but they used to make it off of classified advertisements. And once classified advertisements went away, so did your local newspapers. And they started to go to Craigslist and now go to, of course, a lot of different places and a lot of different outlets. And then the ultimate guy who killed it all is, of course, Steve Jobs and the iPhone. Because now people have become accustomed to receiving news without having to subscribe, without having to pay for it. And regardless of people's thoughts on the news and media, it is they don't work for free, and it doesn't get produced for free. And by not and being and breaking it down, and also being able to not discriminate essentially against outlets. I'm not going to speak ill of my father, but he is one of those guys that if something pops across his Google News feed, well, it must be true because he saw it on the internet. And I spend a good deal of conversation time with my father saying, Dad, I don't know that that's actually, the case. But it came across his phone. He saw it. So it must be the case. And I'm sure that a lot of your parents, a lot of your folks in the community, they don't differentiate between a random message board post from, concerned citizen 123 or the New York Times. To them, they give them all the same amount of weight and treat them all as either absolutely correct and undeniably true or fake news, depending on their perspective of the story. But people no longer differentiate between where they get their news. This can be helpful for you, but you need to know this as you're building your plans to not just rely on talking to the local paper and having them publish your press release or have them cover what you're working on. So what do you do now? This is a little bit more about tactics and about the strategic communications. If you no longer have newspapers that you can rely on to do this, for you and with you, what do you reach out to? What do you look for? I put it in terms of the old choose your own adventure book. As you're working through these plans, you can kind of pick and choose what works best for you. You probably have a great idea of what your parents are looking at. We find that parents look at Facebook. We find that teachers do not look at Facebook. So if we're going to communicate with teachers, we're not going to do it over Facebook. But if we're going to communicate with parents, we try to first target Facebook as the place where we go. But it's different for everybody depending on your local community, what outlets you have. Many parts of the Commonwealth are not going to have a TV station that's going to cover them. Some of them have 3 or 4. It just depends on where you are and what your situation is. The big thing that you have as a school division, as a school leader that helps your strategic communications is your website. You control your website. You control what you put up on your website. You control what you feature and highlight on your website. You also, are telling folks there what they need to know and what they're seeking out. It is your repository for your information. It's where you tell your story, you highlight your successes, you can talk about talk about your people, you can talk about your all the great things that you have done. The one thing I would tell everybody is make sure you keep it current. There's nothing worse than going to a school division website and the last thing they had was, sometime, hey, school's starting, back in August, and they haven't really updated it since then. It's not just a lost opportunity. It really makes your parents and the folks in the community think that you're just not paying attention and that you're not capable of doing kind of basic things. And it's where you tell people what they want to know. So, you have a good idea what your parents want from the website and make it easy to find. We deal with this all the time here at BDOE where we get calls from parents who are like, hey, I'm trying to find this form, this thing on the website and it's not there. And then so we will go and help on my division website. And so we'll go and try to help the parent find it and we struggle to find it. Or it's buried back in the board docs, section, on page 72, item XXX4. And it's something that folks should be able to access and find easily. So the website should be an asset. It should be your tool. And it should, you control it. You get to say what you want on it. You get to put the information that you want on it. Make it your own and make it valuable. Another popular, communication tactic is email. I know some divisions send a weekly email from the superintendent to their parents and to their lists. My caution on email is we all get a lot of it, and it's tough to stay on top of it. Don't assume just because you put it in your email that people are going to see it. You should also have that information on your website. You should have it on your social media. You should have it on other outlets as well. People overlook emails. They get behind on emails. Sometimes it goes to spam. You know all the reasons why emails can and can't work. Make sure it's meaningful. Don't just send the email because it's Friday and you got to send an email. Plan out what you're going to send ahead of time. We will map this stuff out at least a month ahead of time. We will also identify kind of milestones, in the department where we will know, hey, this is coming in July, this is coming in September, and we will work through those and make sure it's clear for your audience. We have a habit of talking to folks who know just as much, or we think know just as much as we do about the topic, and realize that your parents, your community members may not, speak the same kind of edgewalk language that a lot of us speak with our colleagues. So make sure that it's clear, that it's direct, and that it highlights exactly what you want people to know. The other thing too, going back to the use of the iPhone, is most people actually interact now with items through their phone. They don't do it on their desktop. They don't do it on a laptop. They do it on their phones. So when you're writing your paragraphs in your emails, don't make them any longer than what you could typically see on a phone screen. Keep your paragraphs short, and they can scroll through and read it. But if it's multiple screens and they got to keep going, you're going to lose your reader really, really quick. Social media. Social media is, of course, a blessing and a curse. You know how we feel about it when it comes to children under the age of 16, but we're talking about adults right now and who you're trying to communicate with through there. Each of these outlets here have a particular set of audience. We have Google on here, but actually think of Google more as YouTube. And one of the things that has been very valuable for a number of your superintendent colleagues has been the use of video. They may have a in-house team that can do some basic recording. You could even just do it on the iPhone if somebody will stand still and point it in the right direction. But kind of short videos, explanatory videos on topics, short videos on announcements are very well received in the amongst parents and in the community, and actually get a high rate of open. People will view them. If you are resourced as such that you've got a really talented video team and they can do graphics and special shots and all that kind of stuff, use them. The more professional it looks, the better. But please don't go out and hire a professional commercial team to come and record your stuff. An iPhone will do the job for what you really want to do. But again, social media, you need to have a plan. You need to have an idea of who you're speaking to. As I said, we use Facebook for parents. We use LinkedIn for recruiting. We use YouTube for broadcast videos, and we're moving towards some more animated, what I'm going to call animated shorts or animated explainers, in addition to kind of forward-facing videos from the superintendent and other folks as well. We've got X, Twitter on here. It's your choice if you want to use it. Just be aware that the feedback that you get on these on some of these outlets are not necessarily representative of your community. I have I can't grab it from here, but somebody cross-stitched me a nice sampler and it says never read the comments. You certainly will stay more sane if you choose not to wade into those, because you just don't know really who they're coming from, and if you understand what you want to do, there's really no need to have to, and certainly don't engage with your trolls on there. It just encourages them. What are you trying to control and achieve in social media? Guys, this is very, very simple stuff. I'm sure everybody's thought about it, but just to hit it, you control your messaging, much like on your website. You control what you want to put out there. These are your clips. These are your stories. These are the announcements you want to make. You control them through here. You can use it to help internally deliver messages for your employees and for your stakeholders. You also, by putting these up, you allow your employees and other stakeholders and supporters to share these things, to put them out, to kind of own them and put them out themselves. But it also helps to give them the information that they need to advocate on your behalf on these topics and to have something to talk about and say about you. So we encourage you to think about social media through that. And the last is the concept, what I call build the ark before the flood. The time to start using social media is not the day the house is burning down, or when the 40-day storm has come. The time to start using social media is now, and to have that built-in audience there that you can reach out to when you need it, and you have that flood that is here, and you need to be able to get your message out. The time to do it is not to try to build it, in that instant. It's to have built it all along the way. Social media, of course, has its problems. It needs to be purposeful. Don't just do it to do it. It should not, it shouldn't be wasteful. You need to stay current. If you're going to engage on a social media campaign, continue to post, continue to put stuff up. Again, there's nothing more irritating than going and looking for information and finding out the last time that somebody posted was sometime in 2022, if they're a public entity. Oversharing. We all are familiar with the concept of oversharing. You probably have to deal with it with some of your employees there. Just keep that in mind with your corporate entities there as well. And of course, you've got to follow all the various releases and privacy laws as well. And then lastly, make sure you have a policy. I have probably read 131 different social media policies across the Commonwealth. I know as we have been doing some work this year, make sure your policy is current, make sure you're enforcing it, and make sure that it makes sense for your organization. Also, that your people are aware of it, because often we run into issues where the employee's like, I didn't know, that was there. So make sure you're raising it for them along the way. Part of your communication thoughts need to be about being authentic, being truly who you are and truly what your organization represents. If you go out there and you've got to put on a mask, or you put on a show that is not you, your employees are going to know it, your parents are going to know it, and the educators in your system are going to know it. We talk about being selective. In the sense of, again, this is kind of the opposite of oversharing. Talk about what's truly on your heart. Talk about, what is important to you. This is where you can talk about your objectives and your goals. Give folks progress updates and tell them why it's important to you. But be selective on what you want to use, and show integrity there. If you have a mistake, fess up to it. And don't try to cover it up or wash it away. Often, provided that there's no legal jeopardy, a simple "I'm sorry, we screwed up" will go a long way in helping people understand that you're sincere in trying to fix the problem. Being authentic, of course, builds trust with folks. And think about this in advance and kind of how you are using, how you're being authentic in your messaging and authentic in your social media, and in all of your communications. This is your voice. This is not necessarily, somebody on the corporate side who's been, hired to write in your voice or write in their voice on behalf of you. But this is something that you care about and that is truly your messaging. Lastly, it kind of goes without saying, you don't have to have an opinion on everything. You don't have to involve yourself in every fight, in every issue. And in fact, you're probably better and more meaningful if you keep your powder dry on the things that are not truly important to you and your division and your kids. So we just encourage you not to have to jump in on every single issue that's out there because it rarely ends well. We talk about, we've talked a lot about social media and the electronic outlets and things like that. Don't forget, you also have the opportunity to send stuff home in paper. It's something people take home, they can hold on to, they hang it on the fridge. It's easy to print, it's reproduce. Again, the issue is everybody knows sometimes it doesn't ever makes it out of the backpack, kind of like that lunch at the end of the school year in the end of May that you find in August. But we don't necessarily encourage you to just go totally 100% electronic when it comes to communicating with parents. It can often be very helpful to give them something that they can hang on the fridge or put by the door as a reminder to work with. Your messaging, you control your own. We talked about this. You control your own story. You need to celebrate your successes because if you don't, nobody else will. And you need to make it a priority to let people know about the good things that you are doing, the real achievements that you are making in your schools and your communities for your students, because you want folks to know, where things are going well, and be able to celebrate that with your students, your teachers, your educators, and your community. And lastly, keep it as simple as possible. What is your big theme there, and stick to that big theme. Your look. This is something we deal with ourselves. We got 500 and some folks across the organization, many of whom are publishing. We have just we just chosen to kind of redo and modernize our style guide here at VTLA to give it, to modernize it a little bit. To make sure that people were aware we had a style guide and to make sure that we were being, as professional as possible. As I like to remind our folks, we represent we represent educators from across the Commonwealth. It is expected that we're going to know basic things like grammar and punctuation. And we get people pay particular attention when we don't. So we're trying to do a much better job as a department on making sure that we've got just the basics handled and that we're consistent in how we do it. Same thing goes for school divisions. You should have your templates and you make it easy for folks to access, makes it easy to build on. But rather than having, everybody throughout the organization building their own templates and their own fonts, their own sizes with their own fancy little clip arts and things like that, empower them with templates and things to use for their presentations, and it will go a long way for your organization. Talk about working directly with the media. This is probably going to be part of your strategic communications. And we encourage everybody to remember that they have a job to do. Their job is not necessarily to be your press agent or to run your press release in full. They are going to ask questions. You need to be prepared with answers. But it does not have to be an adversarial relationship. Certainly you can build relationships with your local media and, continue to help them. Part of that helping them is, giving them good news. I had a reporter come to me today who said, listen, Christmas is coming. I got to come up with 2 stories that I can file, on the 20th of December that they can run anytime between the 21st and the 5th. So it can't be something that is going to go stale. What do you guys got? We have that kind of relationship that we can work with reporters, and I'm sure you do in your community as well. Help them help you. Understand why you're talking to reporters and why you're engaged with the media. And again, expecting difficult questions. You don't have to answer the questions that they ask you. You don't have to be as obvious as you might see in political debates about it, but you can always steer it back to the answer you want to give, and make sure that you're getting your points across. The one thing we do suffer with is that nothing is truly off the record with folks if they really want to use it. So if you don't want to read it somewhere in print, if you don't want to see it broadcast on TV or out there on social media, don't say it. It's that simple. And also don't think that you are just having a casual conversation with a reporter or a member of the media and give what I call an accidental interview, which is you say something so good that they've got to use it. And you've created a story for yourself. And again, do yourself favors. That's what I just talked about with helping the media help you, make it easy for them to report on the things that you want them to report on, and be attentive to the things that they need to help write positive stories about you. I have a couple other things before I get to the end and open it up for questions that I want to kind of hit on with the group. One of which is we have done a lot of research this year on parent and school communications. Part of it was under focus groups that we undertook regarding test scores and reporting. This was the SOLs and the VGA and how parents get that information and how they perceive it and what they do with it once they get it. And then secondly was, of course, through all of our work on the cell phones. The one theme that we heard consistently is that parents don't feel like they're getting the information that they want from their schools in a timely fashion. And this was really apparent when we started talking and taking public comment on cell phones. It was, well, I don't get this or that from the schools, when I want it. Why would I expect they're going to be able to communicate with me on emergency situations and things like that? So as you are working in your divisions, you're working with your principals, encourage them to think about communicating on a regular basis, to being timely on this, and being topical and giving folks the information that they're going to need when they think they're going to need it. The last thing, and we came across this again, this was part of cell phones, which is the emergency plans that every school division develops. Some of our very well resourced divisions, they've got plans on the website. They're in 4 different languages. They cover every single possible situation, and those are fantastic. And plans are great. You got to have a plan. You've got to have an idea of what you're going to do. But it's really important that you as a superintendent and your building leaders know the plan and can execute the plan when they have to do it under duress. And duress could be any situation you could think of. And I will tell you, as the governor was traveling around a few months ago and was stopping into schools, and we were talking about cell phones, but he was there on something else, he would ask principals, what's your emergency plan? And he was disheartened to often find that the principal knew where it was in the cabinet, but didn't know what to do in certain situations and couldn't really explain it. And they couldn't explain it to the governor. He didn't have any faith that they could or had explained it to their people. And so he told us, he just straight up, he's like, I'm not going to do it today. I'm not going to do it tomorrow. May not do it next month. But at some point, I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to call 10 schools and I'm going to talk to the principals and I'm going to ask them, what's your plan? And I'm hopeful that they're going to be able to tell me, this is my plan. Specifically about the plans, and as we have asked for some and reviewed some of the schools, you got to have redundancy. You've got to make sure you're building redundancy in those emergency plans. The principal cannot be the person who's expected to deal with law enforcement, move the kids, also, get the notices out to the parents and do all the different kind of things. You need to have backups, and often those backups may not actually be in that school building, because they're going to be the people who are best equipped to to manage things like parental communications and other aspects that need to be done on important parts of plans, but for whatever reason, a principal or administrator may not be able to be in that space to execute the plan. These are just kind of things that we have seen communication wise over the past year as we have worked with schools, that we really just want to stress, which is having your having redundancy in your emergency plans, and making sure that your building leaders know those emergency plans. It should not be just a document that they get out every July, change the date on, and then refile. They need to make sure, and your educators and folks in the building need to train on it, so they understand what they're supposed to do should these situations occur. That is strategic communications. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. I've gone about 40 minutes now uninterrupted, and I threw out one question. I didn't get any responses, so I just kept going. But I want to open it up now for if you have questions, if you have situations, if you have experiences that have worked great for you, please share. Would love to hear from you.